I heard somebody say one time, when God's leading you into an area, may give you a vision or something like this, you can usually expect that before that vision comes to fruition, there's going to be what somebody has called a death of a vision. The big theme in my life has been how I can have my plans, but God has the final word in how those plans go. And my desire was to go back to Kenya and minister overseas. And having grown up in Africa, I have felt like I was African, it was a natural thing to me. But here's another part where the story changes. We were within 3 or 4 weeks of going overseas, had all our crates made, bags packed, and everything like this to teach at the Nairobi International School of Theology. And we got an urgent telegram from the school in Kenya saying, stop, don't come. It's become clear to us we want all of our professors to at least have a degree above a master's degree. Go back, get a doctorate degree. Well, I never wanted a doctorate, personally never wanted a doctorate degree. But in order to accomplish what they wanted, we postponed our going, find a university, majoring in cultural anthropology. Well, after I got into it, I began realizing, I saw that PhDs in anthropology were taking, on an average, 8 and 9 years to get their PhD. I said, Lord, what happened? Talk about a switch in plan. And yet here, we were preparing for the school in Kenya, and I didn't want to disappoint them, but I was ready, after a couple of years, I was ready to toss the towel in about every semester. All we had to read and this and that, where I had to just realize, who am I doing this for? Well, I'm doing it for the Lord, to better be able to minister for Him. So that was kind of like my North Star, and I figured I would just stick with it. And I figured, all right, was one step at a time, getting through this whole barrage of requirements necessary. But part of the story you haven't heard is the fact that after we slogged through this, got through it, walked across the platform, and finally received my degree, we finally had it. And we're ready to go back and serve. But what happened was, while we were home getting that degree, the administration at the Nairobi International School of Theology said, you're not needed anymore. And I can't tell you, that was so crushing to us, that here we were, worked all these 11 years with this in mind, only to be told, now we don't need you. And come back and wonder, Lord, I didn't see this in the process coming. And so talk about the test of faith. Moments of saying, God, where are you in this? Are you playing around, or are you toying with us? That you'd make us sweat away for this long, and only to be told this, it did not make sense. But as my wife and I talked it over, we said, God's got a plan in this. We don't know fully what it is, but we're walking with Him. We know we serve the same God. We have the same message. We're with the same team. And I realized, wow, that starts out by saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart. That's what I call the authority base. Everybody has to choose an authority base in their life. And don't lean. I come back to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Don't lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge the fact you're finite. You can only see. I'll tell you a neat illustration that comes to my mind in that regard. Africans used to have little kerosene lanterns. And Africans are great walkers, and they'll walk great distances. Well, if they have to go home at night or come in to see you at night, these little kerosene lanterns just kind of make light on about a 6 to 8 foot diameter. You don't know what's out beyond in the dark. Could be a snake, because we had lots of snakes. But as you moved ahead, that light opened up a new area. And as you moved in that light, it opened up a new area. And we began to realize, and it's kind of like when it talks about, God's word is like a light on our pathway. I often have thought of that. Little narrow African pathways. Little light. It's not the brightest light in the world. Little light. And that's very good analogy for us. We're not the brightest lights in the world either, but what we know, so limited. But as we move ahead in what God has revealed to us and in obedience, He sheds light on the next step. And so while that door was shut, torn away from Africa, kicking and screaming as we came back to the U.S. I can't tell you how sweet that was when one of the ministries here in the U.S. heard about us, called us, and said, "We have been praying for somebody like you with your credentials who has a PhD, and not only that, is in the social sciences. Please come and join us in the ministry to faculty." And when they told us that they had been praying for somebody like us, we figured, God, there you are in that. We've been with that ministry now, working with professors since 1993. And so seeing God's fingerprints, I like to use that term, seeing God's fingerprints, as I look back on my life, seeing God's fingerprints throughout our life, and we realize there's what happened in my life, how God sometimes interrupted my plans to keep me on His plans. And that's been the way I've looked at it all along. But it's a process, and that's not to say there's no moments of anxiety and no moments of saying, God, where are you in this? But if you're following Him, nothing He brings into your life is going to be a waste. God's going to enable you to come back and use that at one point or another in ministry down the way, which you don't even see coming. When you have a loss, embrace that loss. If it's from Him, embrace that loss as something that you'll be able to trust God with, and watch in the future how He uses that and how God has the final word in how those plans go.